right, so I'm going to introduce again Edmund, who is going to give us a presentation and the agenda. Go ahead, Edmund.
Thank you so much. Hey everyone, I'm actually upset because I'm about to press share on my screen, but that means all your faces are going to go disappearing for me. So I feel a bit bad about that, but it's lovely to talk to you today. I'm actually here in Cape Town, or just outside in Franschhoek, so truly representing different parts of the world as I can read the names on the list. If someone would be kind enough to just give me a little thumbs up when you can see my slides big.
You're good.
Wonderful. Well, this is an honor. Thank you, Marina, both for inviting us, but actually for your infectious energy. I can tell you're building something special here. When we talked a couple of times before setting this up, you know, there's a very wholesome intent about this study group, and I can tell that it's really working. You can see by the amount of people who've turned up, and I can see it having a really interesting longevity. So just a quick well done, Marina. This is clearly something special, and I think it's just starting to brew. We're going to keep this fairly light today. So in terms of agenda, I think there may be some interest beyond just finding out who Mathilda and I are in the story around phrase, or I probably should say the story around memsource and phrase. So I'll quickly touch on that and help complete the picture, maybe give you a bit of a peek under the hood of the reason we've changed the name, and a little bit of directional input into what can be expected from the company over the next few years. Very swiftly, I will hand over to the star of the show, Mathilda, to give you an actual look at the product and to walk through the different UIs depending on who you are using the tool. And then maybe the best bit, we will obviously open this up for completely candid and transparent Q&A at the end, and I really do ask you to ask anything. If we can't tell you, we can't tell you, but I don't imagine, because we don't run NASA or NATO, that there will be too much off the table, so feel free. Excellent. So, and if people come in behind me, I apologize. So my name's Edmund. I am the GM of North America here at Phrase. I've actually only been with the company 6 months, but I do have some adjacent experience in the industry because I spent the last 5.5, 6 years at Unbabel. Some of you may know, a Lisbon-based company in the translation sphere. So I've been around this area for a while, and it was incredibly exciting and a complete honor to me to be asked to help grow the region for Phrase. And I'll hand over to Mathilda to introduce herself.
Yeah, hi. Like Ed mentioned, I'm Mathilda Klein, and I'm one of the senior solution architects based out of the US. I'm in Oregon. I saw somebody in the chat just said hi from Seattle, so I think we've got about the same weather going on probably. I'm originally from Sweden, but I've been in Oregon for, well, going on like 13 years now, and I have the same number of years in the localization industry too. And I probably have shared a lot of the same roles as some of you, you know, starting out as just a passionate person about language and going up through, yeah, different, very interesting roles. So nice to meet you all.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, for some of you, I think this may be old news. For some of you, this may be interesting. For some of you, this may be completely new. So there probably is a fairly decent level of understanding within the community around memsource. So memsource is an established TMS brand. It's been around since 2010, and it really is one of the newer breed of TMS platforms that were built in the cloud to help provide the solutions that companies need to get their translation projects done, and translators need to do those translations. Clearly, the capabilities built out impressively over time, and we, moved with the market and what the localization dynamics were asking for. But because that's 13 years ago, I rarely have to explain to too many people what memsource is. In fact, people often teach me about memsource way before I came along. There was a second company that was also well known in its space called Phrase. Phrase was founded actually only a year later in 2011, and it took on a similar problem, but focused a little bit more on removing steps and leaning into the strings translation side, which Mathilda will explain much more eloquently in a little while. The acquisition then happened, and it was actually, and this is what people seem to find interesting, MemSource that acquired Phrase, and that was the dynamic. Although it doesn't really matter, that's just a business transaction. But it's worth knowing in the community that MemSource went out to the market, looked for the best of breed tooling in this area, and acquired the company and brought in this incredible team, predominantly in Hamburg, but also around the world. And this was a step towards the latest version of the Phrase story, which is more of a best of breed suite. So this is the ability to have within a single toolkit or suite or platform, depending what word you want to use, but it doesn't really matter. It's the ability to have a similar look and feel, but not just two solutions squashed together, solutions that can do different things in a very powerful way. So what does that really mean to customers today? And what does it mean to people in the industry like yourselves? Well, I think of it in 4 specific pillars. There's a lot more nuance, but this is a easy way to think about us in terms of differentiation, because there's a lot of tools out there, and specifically this group I know has had some of our wonderful competitors come and talk to you as well. So where are we very, very strong? So firstly, we can allow you to do whatever custom translation and localization workflows you need, manage any LSPs, manage any content types, any file types that you would expect. This is now somewhat table stakes, I'd argue, but is clearly a big part of what we are, and frankly, a big reason most companies use us. On top of that, and slightly looking in a nod towards the future, we are also adding on increasing layers of automation and specifically removing the friction and manual effort that needs to go into people building those custom workflows. So the easiest way to explain this that people new to the industry might understand is, in the same way that Zapier created an understanding in computing generally around if this then that, so you can connect different systems, build different workflows, decide what happens with different file types, different CMS integrations, etc. We are building out our capabilities and launching some really exciting things very soon in this area that will allow localization managers and even business function owners who have no localization or engineering experience to be able to build impressive and powerful workflows within the system. This is really exciting. Another piece of the puzzle is our machine translation capabilities. Clearly building a platform that not only allows you to manage the LSPs or internal translators on the human side, but also allows you to select and plug in any off-the-shelf or custom machine translation engine is where the industry is going. I think that's fairly well understood. One nuance that we have is we have an algorithm, or what we call a selector, MT selector, that allows the right engine to be picked instantly for the right workload. And this is a nod again towards where things are going, the idea of blending the right human and machine capabilities for different workloads, but doing it instantaneously. And so this is a big part of our platform. And a similar, slightly adjacent piece of the pipeline is clearly QE. I'm sure many of you are familiar. If you're not, it's the thing that tells you how good that machine translation output was and gives you a score against it, which can mean many things. And to us, it does mean many things. We can offer and surface many scores. And what's happening is clearly the industry is starting to build those into sophisticated workloads. And so the fact that we can provide that QE capability not only allows you to understand whether you need to add a human on to an MT output, or but also whether you need to you want to do something much more sophisticated around adding multiple layers of editors and similar. So that's where we are. That's where we're going. Hopefully that paints a starting point of a picture for you, but none of that's remotely interesting compared to seeing it in action. So I will hand over and stop sharing my screen to Mathilda to walk you through the actual product.
Awesome, Ed. Okay, let me share my screen here. So yeah, I am sharing right now the phrase TMS, and I'm going to be going through a very brief demonstration of just a few of the really many cool things that you can actually do with our phrase localization suite. So some of you might have used phrase MemSource in the past or the phrase TMS in the past, but I'm going to kind of focus on now the new suite and what you can do with the full product. So the phrase localization suite is now one central platform with several integrated products. So we're aiming at covering all of the enterprise localization needs. So it includes our translation management system, phrase TMS, which is aimed at, among others, but mainly localization teams that are actually managing the translation workflows, as well as the actual providers of language services. Then there's the string management solution, which is phrase strings, where digital product teams can collaborate to store and update and publish all of their software content, so their software keys and strings. And then there's also a range of, like Ed mentioned, automation and machine translation functionalities. And all of these things are available now under our one suite, our phrase localization suite. And in large, you can actually also use all of these products separately. So you have the option of using it all as one suite, but also still using them separately, which I think is really amazing. Okay, so I'm going to start off here in my Figma. And used together, the phrase TMS and strings can really help connect the localization workflow all the way from design all the way through to development. Designers that are working in, for example, Figma, can push their content, their strings, and the context to translation via our strings integration. So there's this plugin called Phrase Strings that you can enable in your Figma, and you can connect your contents and easily transfer them into phrase strings and then all the way through into phrase TMS via our job sync. So I have my contents here, which I've connected over into my phrase strings. So here are my strings. This is our strings editor. I'm going to be translating into German and Swedish. And I can now create the job, which will send this contents over into the TMS. I'm just going to use one of my templates. Let's add these keys that we want to work on. And these are my languages. And now you could use strings on its own. This is where you can add translators and invite folks in to actually do the translation directly in strings. But what we're going to do is send it over into the TMS and show you some of the deeper functionalities of using a translation management system to do this work. And another thing that I want to mention too, before I create this, these designers or developers can also add, you see the context that we have here, for instance, that came in from Figma. So you have context, and you can also add things like descriptions, of course. Like up here, you can add a description and character limits. So I actually do have a character limit on, I think on this key. And yeah, so we have a character limit of 10, for instance, and this will also get passed in, and you'll see how that looks in TMS. So let's create this job. Let's start that. And now I'm using an automation also in my TMS that's already monitoring my strings for this job to be created. And it's automatically creating the project for me. So we just have to refresh. And here's my job that just got created. And my watch also vibrated because I've got the mobile app. So it tells me with push notifications that a project was created because I'm the owner of a template. Okay, so let's take a look at this project. So this is what just got created from my templates. So I had created a template previously with these workflow steps. We're doing machine translation that already got completed automatically, and it's now sitting in post editing. So these are workflows that I've created myself, defined myself what's going to happen in these workflows, and these linguists were automatically assigned and emailed. So they've already gotten the notification about this work. Now I'm going to go into a little bit deeper later, actually doing the work, but just to wrap this, I'm going to just push these contents in their empty state back to strings. So you have the option to push contents at any point in time or at the end of a project. So they can automatically get pushed when everything is finished as well. So let's come back in here. Here's my editor and strings. Now we can refresh this. And here's my translations. So we've got the English more translated into Swedish and German, all this. And now we can just pull it back into my Figma, just make it full circle here. Let's pull Swedish in. And I'm going to create a new page with this translated contents, but I could also overwrite this, but in my case, I want a new page. And here's my Swedish page that just got localized with a machine translation. So in this case, at this point, you could do some final in context review in here and then go back over into the TMS and make some tweaks for translation that maybe doesn't fit or where you have to change something for the context. And one really cool thing about using this type of process is that you're localizing during your Figma design. And as long as you have some consistency in the layering, the names of layers, for instance, this string right here, I have a name which actually acts as a key that you can then reuse in your software build. So you can get ahead of translation for the development of the software. If you translate it during your Figma, you're done with translation. When the development starts, you can generate out these strings in many different formats from phrase strings. So phrase strings allows you to go from one format to many. So even though they're coming in from Figma as XLIF files, you can generate them out as Android resource files, iOS resource files, whatever it is that you need. So content stored inside of phrase strings is any to many formats. So you can really get ahead of that. And I show you here too, if I click on one of these keys, so you saw the context that comes in automatically here, where it's also identified already which keys are in what part of the screenshot. This is for Figma, but there's also other integrations like I have an example of GitHub, for instance, where I've got a Android resource file and I'm syncing this into my phrase strings as well. I'm also able to have screenshots here by simply associating them. So I can drag screenshots in, or this can be pushed over the API if you have some screenshots produced. And and they can be auto-detected as to what areas of the screenshots belong to what keys. And these also go all the way through into your TMS project. So if I open this up, let's open this one. This context is available all the way through into your translation editor. Okay, so we'll get deeper into this later, to the editor. I wanted to also show you another example of centralized collaboration that you can do with the phrase suite and the phrase TMS specifically. Some of you may have worked on DTP projects in the past desktop publishing projects. These are projects that have files that often need some sort of pre-processing and sometimes post-processing as well. So pre-processing where you might have to prep files for translation. Maybe you have to enlarge the text boxes, remove line breaks, and a lot of other stuff. So files like InDesign file, Photoshop files, really can be quite a wide range of file formats that need pre-processing. And then after you finish translation, I've got translation and revision here, then you may also need to do some DTP post-processing where you're taking those translated files and adjusting the layout, right, to fit the longer text, which comes with translation often, and more as well. So in Phrase TMS, you can load these DTP project files like InDesign or Photoshop, like I have here, IDML file. And you can continue using this project as a central place throughout all of those steps. You can completely customize the naming of your workflow steps. You define what you do in them. Each becomes its own version inside of the project. And you can store these different versions that your DTP team is handing back and forth in the references. I have down here a zip file that I provided to the DTP team after the translation finished. And then they were assigned inside of the desktop publishing workflow step. That's where they take the file externally and do this post-processing. And they've now uploaded a QA-ready package that I can now take and pass to my linguists to be used in the in-context review step. You can store all these different versions in your references. So they're all in this one project from start to finish. And then when you're happy with the final result, you can use our file handover feature to store a final version, the golden version, the final one for delivery. You can store that as an alternate version on your jobs. And you can see there's also two options now as I've uploaded a final version. So you could download the completed one from translation or the final, in this case, DTP, the edited file. Okay, so our goal is for all of the products to be really easy to learn and use, and that they should be highly customizable. I talked about workflow steps, for instance, so you can add any workflow steps that you want into the system, hundreds of workflow steps, different variants, whatever you want to call them, and you can use 15 of them in one project. Here I'm using 5, but you can have up to 15 workflow steps in any one project. You can create as many translation memories as you want in the system. If you have different translation memories for different areas, different domains or types of contents, and you can use up to 10 of them per language per workflow step. So each step can have 10 different translation memories in read mode, and you can write to 2 different translation memories. So highly customizable. The same applies to term bases. So you can also have 10 different term bases for every language for each workflow step, and you can write to one of those in every workflow step. There's also customizable metadata fields. So this is one of our newest releases. These two fields right here, these are custom fields that I've created for my cloud. So I have my team apple, I've got team cake. You can use emojis inside of your fields, which I find to be awesome. You can make your own fields and set them as mandatory or not, set them as what type of content is going to go inside your fields. Is it going to be multi-select, single select, text? Is it a date? Set them up, use them all over your templates. Very customizable. And you can customize your pre-translation settings. So whether or not you're going to be using, let me show you here, whether or not you're going to be using translation memory or machine translation or a combination of both, and how deeply you're going to be using your TM, you know, what threshold you want to be leveraging and pre-translating from the TM. And you can also define custom file import settings. So when you're loading jobs, all of these out of the box are available with some default settings, but you can also really customize and fine tune how these different file types, common file types that you load in, how you want them to be read by the system. And you can do this directly in the platform, and it's really easy. Any project manager or admin, a PM with admin rights can do this when you're creating a job or in a template or on the global level. And then now let's dive into the editor. Let's go back to, let's go back to this one, for instance. So in the TMS, we also have a full-fledged CAT tool, both for web and desktop. So this one is the web, but you can also download and work on this on your desktop. And it's all major browsers and operating systems. And there's also a mobile app. So like I mentioned, I got push notifications. There's a mobile app also with an editor. You can do project management and editing in the mobile app. And just to frame what we're looking at here, so this is the editor. Here I'm using translation memory and our machine translation offering Phrase Translate. So these probably look familiar to most of you, but the numbers here on the right are the match percentage. The ones that are not underlined, so the one that I'm clicking on right here, this is a 101, so a context match that came from my translation memory. You can see here which TM it came from. So this is something that has been translated in the past and in this exact same context. And we also have a 100, which is just something that matches fully, right? 100% with something translated in the past, but that means it does not have the same context. And then the items that are underlined, these are the ones that are coming from machine translation. So I'm using for this project Phrase Translate, something that Ed talked about earlier, which in when you're loading something in, when you're creating a job, it runs, we run a domain classification to identify what kind of content it is. So it falls into certain buckets, like, is it marketing? Is it web? Is it health related, travel related? So there's, I think there's 11 different categories. And then it picks the best engine for this language for that category of contents. And in my case, Phrase Translate picked Microsoft Translator as the best one for Swedish for this area. And it's showing these scores, which Ed also talked about, the MTQE, so Machine Translation Quality Estimate. This is our AI that's grading. It's estimating how good of a match it thinks this is. And so you have a range all the way down to 75 of kind of a confidence score of how confident the AI is in this needing or not needing editing. So a 75 you would probably want to take a look at, but a 100, it could be a really good match. And it uses this, it goes off of how these types of segments have been edited in the past in the platform. So That's how it gains knowledge on what type of segments may or may not need to be edited. We talked about the context. You have your context down here. We talked about the character limitations, right? So remember this string had some character limitations. If I start typing more than what the character limitation allows, I'm getting some visual input here that I'm now one character over that character limitation from phrase strings. So let's remove that. You have filters up here. So you can filter and source text, filter and target, search and replace, of course, and lots of other filters on segments, whether or not they meet certain criteria. And you can also open, here I'm just opening a single file, but you can actually open multiple files in a joined view as well. Let me show you that in here real quick. So if you have a project that has even several hundreds of files, I'm going to open these two Swedish files here, for instance. I can open them together. It's as simple as that in a joined view. And now I have my first file here. And as I scroll down, here's my second file down here. So you can also open multiple files in a joined view. And the same thing goes for the desktop editor. What else do we have over here? So on the right side, you have a cat pane. So this is showing you all the different things, all the different results from different assets. So if I click on this one, I can see my TM match and my MT match over here. So if I had a term base on this, I'd also see the term base match. So if there's any contents, which I think I have a term base here. Yeah, so here's some of those term-based matches, and it's highlighting for me also term-based matches in the source so that I know to pay attention to those. And you can also do a search, like a concordant search across all of the connected assets. All those TMs, term bases that we talked about, you could have up to 10, right? So you can search in all of them in one central place here. So this is just to name a few features. There's quite a lot of other features that you can use in the editor. Some other stuff that I really like is also being able to collaborate and leave comments on segment level. So between you in the first workflow step and anybody after you can, and with your project manager, you can leave comments, create comment threads on segments. And you have threads that you can leave open and marked resolved, and they get marked on the segment level in the editor. So you can communicate between different workflows. And you can also run automated QA checks, really important, right? To make sure that there aren't any issues before we deliver translation. So this is a long list of QA checks that are available out of the box. And you can also add to this by building your own custom QA checks with regex. So as a project manager, as an admin, you can add these into your template. If something is missing, something that we didn't account for already in the out-of-the-box QA checks, you can add your own custom. So you can reduce a lot of errors in final products here by using these linguistic terminology, formatting and tag checks, and more. And then lastly, another thing that's really cool in the editor is inside of the editor, directly inside the editor, you can do LQA, language quality assessment. So if I have an issue here where something is not translated correctly, and if you want to track that quality and generate a score based on the total number of word count in the file and certain error categories and their weight, I can log LQA issues here. So maybe I want to add one here that says, maybe just style, and let's call it a minor style issue. I can now flag that. I put a flag right here. And now as I finish this assessment, it will calculate a score based on those total words. And actually we're still within the passing range. And you can generate this out and share it with linguists that were working on your project. Okay, so one of the last things that I wanted to show you is our new analytics. So let me pull this up here. So on the in the left-hand side here, we have beta analytics that we just released, and we're going to be building on this. This is one of our newest features. Admins and project managers can visualize now in the inside the platform directly without having to generate any exports of data, all the content that's being processed in the platform. So here I'm just filtering by the last 3 months. So you have some filters up here you can set up, and it's showing me things like word count by month, word count by language pairs, totals, different providers that I'm using, and word count by the different metadata that I have available, like domain. I had 55% of my contents was marketing within these last months. So this is really cool to have in the platform, nicely visualized. You have to rely much less on exports of data, right, to pull together some of this reporting. And I showed you the connection, the integration with phrase TMS and phrase strings, but there's so many other integrations. We have integrations directly from the TMS into code repositories, CMSs, customer support tools. If you are interested, you can go to phrase.com/integrations and see a list of all of these. But these are really, really helpful in avoiding like file handovers between systems. I'm sure a lot of you have had that in the past where you have to download files to actually pull them into a translation management system. We have a lot of integrations where you can just hook that up as a connector into the system, and now in the TMS inside of your projects, when you're creating jobs, you can just pull contents directly from and push contents back to these connected systems. So that is it for my demonstration, and I hope you found everything useful. Should we look at some questions?
Yes, Mathilda, great job. That was amazing amount of information. So I think everybody really appreciated that. We have a lot of questions in the Q&A, and hopefully we can get through them all. And if we can't, we can perhaps have follow-up done later on. Also, real quick, Mathilda, the free trial, do you have the link for the free trial that you can put in the chat? And then I will for sure put in the recording notes.
Yeah, Kate just added it. So it's that us.phrase.com/IDM sign up. Yeah.
Okay, everybody. And that's for 14 days. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. 14
Excellent.
days.
Okay, so go right ahead, and oops, there's a lot of questions in the Q&A, maybe toward the top. Can you see them, or do you need for me to read them to you?
I can. I have the chat open here. I'm just trying to get to where the beginning. Let's start from the top, I guess. Yeah, let's see. And as you're using the trial, also just wanted to show you too. Down here in the left side of both solutions is where you have the help. This is your best friend. This is a context help. So as you're trying this out using your trial, whatever page you're on, click on that help button. It'll take you to our help center as well, where you'll get tons of information. We have lots of information in the help center. And you can also contact us and talk directly to one of our support people if you have questions as well. Okay, so let's see. So see, we had a question, is the result different if pushing from Figma directly to the TMS, missing any visual context? So this is a great question, actually. So I was using the strings plugin. So you saw maybe here when I was right-clicking in plugins, there's two connectors. We have a connector for strings and we have a connector for the TMS. So we have two methods, and you can use either of these and they will both come with the context. They work a little bit differently in that, one is sending the content into strings and actually puts the screenshots on each key level versus the TMS integration that we have will take the whole page and attach it as a reference file inside of the TMS. So they work a little bit differently, but they still come with the context, just looks slightly different. Preview. So another question, can the preview be toggled between source and target? Yes, definitely. So let me show you inside of this view here. So here I'm previewing an InDesign file. This is quite an old one that still has some MemSource branding, but here we're seeing the Swedish translation right now, and you have this little button right here where you can flip easily between source and target. In the preview, I can also click on segments, and it will jump inside the editor here to take me to different sections. So if I click on this guy, it now jumped down here also to show me kind of live as I'm translating. It will also update the preview right there.
Does that apply only, sorry to interrupt, but while we're at it, does that apply only to editable formats? Because I was asking while you were showing the Figma.
Yeah, so inside of the Figma project, let's see here. So this is just a picture. This is a screenshot that gets passed.
Okay, so it's a picture. What about in the strings editor?
So in the strings editor, it is still a picture, but it does highlight what section, but this one does not change to show the localized one, but you can after you translate. So this Figma design that we generated into Swedish, I can actually push this content now from the Swedish version into strings. So you could have a step where you're asking your developers to generate out these screenshots, the localized screenshots. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It would have been useful. I mean, for which formats? Probably HTML, InDesign, and other pure textual files, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there's a lot of different formats that have the live sort of preview. There's also, so I mean, yeah, I have a list. We can share a list of which ones have some sort of preview. It's a lot of different file formats, apart from the ones that are just like code files, which then we do show still the preview of the code, but not with any visual context. There's also a lot of different types of connectors that have different preview depending on what we can get from the integrated system. I had one open here in case somebody was interested with, for instance, WordPress. In WordPress, because we have access into their API, that we can pull the entire contents of even the surrounding navigation and the CSS and the styling of the site. So with some systems, we have a really cool preview, an actual like live inside of the actual context preview. So it really highly depends on what connector you're using and then what file type. But that's something we could probably share after on just which ones have, what list of files have what type of preview.
Yeah, Mathilda, that'd be great to provide a list, and I can put that into the notes.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to kind of sort through this a little bit. Olivier, I've answered your question about Figma, and then Stefan has a question about how does Phrase handle proprietary data? Do you see that, Mathilda?
Yeah, I think we could give a link to our data processing page. That'll give you a lot deeper information.
Okay.
How about that? It's a long article to read.
Sure.
So definitely something we can follow up with a link to.
Yeah, do that follow-up. That'd be great. Okay, then, Helena, can we take a peek at the LQA options? Did you already do that? I think so.
Were you wanting to maybe look at the different options?
Actually, this one's been answered mostly.
Okay, it has.
But if you
Good.
would like to show us anything else, of course, feel free.
Yeah. So, and what I was picking from, there's a few different categories, like I selected accuracy in here, but it's basically aligned with the TAUSC DQF categories that are available, and you can expand on them as well when you set it up. If you get a trial and you want to check it out, it's inside of the settings, and then in LQA, that's where you can see the whole list of all the different options that you can have during LQA assessment.
Great. Okay, let's see.
I think
Oh, sorry,
About
go
the
ahead.
LQA, something that might be of interest is how it's generated and how it can be pushed back to the linguist who processed the previous step, and ways to export it if there's some, because I'm working with the LQA now and I really like the option to see the score, to send it back to the linguist with the feedback, etc.
Yeah.
If you have any completed LQA.
Yeah, so this is what it looks like here on this job that we completed. Let me complete out the task so that we can generate out the actual scorecard. And I should be able to share, I'm sharing my screen here. So it's going to give me an Excel file. So as I completed that. So now here you can export it. If you wanted to just export and take a look at the output. Let me make sure that comes up here. Yeah, here we go. So you get this sort of scorecard with the different, here's my error and the severity, and an export of just all the segments that I had added a comment on. And this can be either shared manually, or you can download or send it directly from inside of the tool. So you can send it to somebody who was working on the task, or even CC another email if you wanted to send it externally as well. Yeah.
Cool. That is amazing. All right. Thanks. Okay. So moving on, Yuka has at 8:08 her comment, if you're working directly with Figma, what is the target output file formats you can generate the target file? Did you cover that?
Yeah, so we talk to Figma with XLIF files. So we're generating from Figma XLIF, and that's what we're sending back over into Figma as well. That's the file type that gets also shared between the strings and the TMS platform. But then when you're done localizing content, so inside of a project here in strings, like I mentioned, you can actually export in a wide range of formats. So if I go to my languages tab here, I can just select for German to download this content, and you can specify what content we should generate it out. So it's really open to any of our supported file types. Yeah.
I see Jesse. Jesse, I'm going to have her do your question, then we'll go back to Boriana. So Jesse asked, this is a nice long one. Does the phrase TMS offer OCR, optical character recognition capability, or can it be integrated into the workflow for documents of, that need to be scanned PDF kind of thing?
Yeah. So we have the ability to read in PDF files, but I want to give the caveat of, it is PDF files is sometimes you don't really get what you expect to get, because they do tend to get kind of jumbled in the layers and stuff. So even if something looks visually like, it should be 1, 2, 3, you load a PDF file and stuff can get kind of scrambled around. So we support loading a PDF file, a couple of different options. The default option, just for sake of doing word count analysis. So you can create a job with a PDF and get it in the editor, but take it with a grain of salt that, we're just reading a readable PDF. And it has to be also that, it has to be a readable PDF. The other option, so in short, I would not really recommend using this for translation unless you want to do a lot of work with it and checking. But our other option is we have an integration to a company called TransPDF. And we also have other partners that we work with that you can use this TransPDF alternative. It's a separate subscription that you manage with them. So you pay credits for documents, and it allows you to load more file types, like a PDF, for instance, where it actually gets sent to them, and they do some really advanced processing on PDF files. So in short, via integration to another partner, yes, it is possible. For word count purposes, yes, you can do it in a tool, but we don't do an OCR that I would recommend highly for translating that content directly without using another partner.
Great. Well, and have a good DTP person on hand.
Mhm.
It's always helpful.
Yeah.
Quick question. What's the approximate cost of that subscription?
The trans PDF, I can't speak to it, but maybe Kate could send a link to their page, their offerings. Maybe it could be something we could follow up on since they're a partner of ours. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Great. Okay, so after that, what types of tasks would be typical for loc engineer working with phrase?
So inside of phrase strings, I mean, you could have tasks like doing bug fixing or managing strings, adding descriptions and contents like that. I mean, mainly making revisions to source strings and pushing contents from the strings into TMS or pushing it out for translation, right? Creating the jobs. Tagging contents to make sure that the strings are all organized according to like the area. Yeah, just general tasks like that.
Excellent, thanks. Rodrigo, let's see. Can you click on analytics quality? Did you do that yet?
Oh yeah, let's actually do that real quick. So I was only in the first tab. There are 3 tabs of analytics. So I was just looking at the volume, but you can actually get lots of time related analytics. So let's maybe remove the time range so we get some data. So these would be things like delivery time, on-time delivery, statistics by provider on-time delivery, so time related information, and then quality. This goes directly into the LQA, the quality assessment, right? So you can across time see averages and issues that have happened in projects. There's a lot of different breakdowns in here. Severity by month, different types of errors. You're going to see a lot more information in here if you process more contents than what I do in my non-production account. I guess if I uncheck this year, we'll get a little bit more contents. And another thing that's good to know about this is a beta that we just released, right? And these are the standard analytics, but we are also going to be offering a more customizable version of this. So a more advanced version of analytics. So definitely something to stay tuned for that we're going to be talking about very soon.
So thanks everybody for being here again. Edmund, thank you. Mathilda and Kate, thanks for the assist with the links.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you
Thanks
all.
for
Bye-bye.
organizing.
I'm
Thanks,
saving the
Marina.
chat. Thanks, Stefan. All right, everybody, take care.